producer would not allow me to. But since everybody here is friendly and all, is anybody here high?
The streets smell a little bit different.
I'm hot. I mean that all these people are making this money, and we're not participating in
That's
it.
true.
I'm a little upset about
Hopefully
that.
they're going to work that out. Hopefully they're gonna. Our panelist, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, how are you, sir?
Fine, sir.
Good, good, good. The wonderful Rochelle Crump, how are you?
I'm president accounted for, and I'm not high, sir.
Okay. Attorney Ernesto Borges, Consular, you
Yes,
okay?
hey Cliff, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Yeah.
And of course, our money man, Sean Claiborne. I bet you he could get the money for us that we need. Sean, how are you?
Try.
Yeah.
Doing well. Happy New Year.
We are going to go to a CNN audio clip, and then I'm going to talk about that with Dr. Arnold.
Christian, give us the global perspective on where this leaves America this morning and our allies, because Benjamin Netanyahu, fully supportive of Israel, fully behind the U.S. on this. But France, the French government this morning says the world is now a more dangerous place.
Well, you know, you heard Secretary Pompeo say to John that the French are wrong. I mean, he categorically said that. Remember that on the eve of the Iraq war, the U.S. invasion of Iraq in March of 2003, then President Chirac said the United States was going to open a can of worms, and France did not go along with this action and wanted more time to figure out what exactly was the intelligence with the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And President Chirac was proved right. I think the French have a huge history in that region. So do the British, so do many other people who not only have a history and a diplomatic history, but also have people and personnel in the region. So that is going to be, again, something to watch, because as everybody has said, it's unlikely that Iran would take on the United States in any effort at symmetrical warfare. It's very, very unlikely. It hasn't happened in the past. It's unlikely to happen now. But the asymmetrical, the ability to lash out in many parts of that region is clear and present. And it is the reason, or at least one of the main reasons, why successive U.S. presidents, from George W. Bush to Barack Obama and up until now President Trump, have not taken this massive escalatory step. And remember, Qasem Soleimani was at the height of his power when he was taken out. Unlike Osama bin Laden, who was a forgotten, nothing burger, sort of hiding in a, villa in Pakistan. But it's not the person you take out, it's what they leave behind, and the tentacles and who comes next. Al-Qaeda terrorism did not end with the sidelining of Osama bin Laden. ISIS has not ended with the killing of al-Baghdadi. So if you're trying to end whatever's happening, this is a major escalation, and we need to see what the plan is.
Also, another note, obviously, Soleimani, for better or for worse, and this isn't a value judgment, he was a government official. That's what differentiates him from bin Laden as well. So you were killing a government official with this, and that has different implications. Christian, we have to let you go in about 20 seconds. The U.S. relationship with Iraq, the Iraqi Prime Minister Abdul al-Mahdi condemned this action. It's a violation of the U.S. agreement to station troops in Iraq. What will this do to the U.S. presence there?
Well, overnight, the U.S. missile attacks on the Al-Khatib, the Hezbollah Al-Khatib base, changed the U.S.-Iraq relationship. Iraq suddenly went, and this is what experts are telling me, from, demonstrating against Iranian presence and others to demonstrating against the United States. Did the United States expect its embassy in Iraq, one of the most guarded embassies in the world, to be breached by pro-Iranian militias in Baghdad? Did the United States expect that when it retaliated for the killing of that American contractor? And now the government of Iraq is under massive pressure. We'll see how it plays out, and whether these Shiite militias, whether it's Muqtada al-Sadr in Iraq, whether it's Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon, what is the pressure from the streets? And of course, what will Iran do? I mean, the idea of Iran wanting now to do that famous photo op that President Trump wanted back in September of the UN. It's over. They're talking about revenge now. And so we just simply don't know what's going to happen. And remember, the French are saying it's more dangerous because Emmanuel Macron was the mediator between President Trump and Hassan Rouhani, trying to get that relationship back on track. But the U.S. have gone from maximum economic pressure to now military action.
Very interesting. WVON call-in number 312-374-8130. Doctor, you are, of course, a Dr. Arnold, a combat vet, and we got more? Oh, we got more. Oh, I didn't know we have more.
Lawmakers this morning are demanding more details from the president about the U.S. airstrike that killed a top Iranian commander in Iraq, with rising concerns about escalating tensions. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi declaring the strike, ordered by the president and resulting in the death of a top Iranian general, lacked authorization, and demanding the Trump administration immediately brief lawmakers, releasing a statement warning tonight's airstrike risks provoking further dangerous escalation of violence, adding the full Congress must be immediately briefed on the serious situation and on the next steps under consideration by the administration. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff adding Congress didn't authorize and American people don't want a war with Iran. All steps must now be taken to protect our forces against the almost inevitable escalation and increased risk. Several Republicans echoing that call for congressional consultation, including Senator Mitt Romney, who urged the administration to pursue a coherent strategy and promising to press for additional details. Overall, reaction was mostly split down party lines, with the president's allies praising the move. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy tweeting Soleimani was a terrorist. President Trump and our brave service members just reminded Iran and the world that we will not let attacks against Americans go unpunished. Senator Tom Cotton tweeting Soleimani got what he richly deserved, and all those American soldiers who died by his hand also got what they deserved.
That's interesting. Yeah, Dr. Arnold, former combat veteran and all. What do you think about this?
Well, it's really very, very disturbing. Iran's Revolutionary Guards Quds Force is where this General Qasem Soleimani was really in charge. He was doing a lot of operations against U.S. soldiers and military personnel, caused the death of a lot of people in Iraq and throughout the region. But one of the things that in order to go forward, you have to actually base your actions on reliable information coming from the people who are in your intelligence agencies, the people who are actually on the ground there, your combat commanders, knowing exactly what's going on. Also, there was a kind of, as Nancy Pelosi said, there was a need to go to Congress first to explain things. So to take an action like this, and as we know, we have been having problems with veracity and statements coming from people who are surrounding the White House. And that actually gives me a lot of concern, a deep, deep concern. Now you've actually set something into motion that's during an election year.
That's right.
That you are actually dividing people not only within this country, but also in those countries overseas. Now, we were in Iraq, and we've had a relationship with them since going into the war about moving in towards a democratic kind of basis for this, for their government. But Iraq also relies on Iran as far as supplies, as money, food, all kinds of things that they have an exchange relationship with in the Middle East.
Right.
And again, it goes back to what Colin Powell said when we entered the war. Initially, you break it, you own it.
Yeah.
And the question is, are we going to own this, and who's going to pay the price? Is it going to be our military personnel paying the price for something that wasn't really well thought out? We already have troops going overseas. Godspeed with them. And
absolutely, this is a very unfortunate situation, actually, to do this, because a lot of people are thinking that this one has to do with impeachment. It has to do with all kinds of things. And Sean, what do you think about this?
Well, almost like it seems like a case like you alluded to of a wag the dog case.
Yeah.
As opposed to
Wag
dog
the
wagging
tail.
the tail.
Right,
Wagging the dog
yeah,
instead.
right, yeah.
But the issue I think that I think is complicated in this is the fact that it's a very, very tense moment. And what Dr. Arnold talked about is also what do you do in the aftermath. I personally don't see this turning into another Iraq at this point. I mean, there's a lot of things that are different between Iraq and Iran. When we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, we're going after the Taliban to take down the regime. We're not necessarily trying to take on a regime in Iran. You know, and the Iranians are very, very smart about what they're trying to do as far as their retaliation tactics. More than likely, which is even more scarier in a lot of different ways, this could unfold in ways that's never actually happened anywhere else in history. As opposed to, because they don't do wars as, you know, they know they can't take us on one-on-one. And the Ayatollah Khomeini is not trying to step down and leave power. Iran is in a very difficult situation because they have a whole younger generation that does not like the government. And that's what Donald Trump is also trying to capitalize on. Some people are actually cheering that this general was assassinated in Iran. Yeah. Okay. Now the thing is, once you get to a situation where Iranians start to retaliate, they can do it the ways they've done it in the past. We might have another 9/11 on our hands. We might have cities and things like that under attack. They're not going to go with, they're not going to do the same stuff they did in France, like we talked, like they had on the news clip. France knows firsthand about what happens when you piss off the Iranians and piss off Muslims. They've had the incident where a gunman went out and shot up a newspaper office. One of the leading newspapers, Le Monde in France, was completely shot up, and they had people that died in that massacre because and these were militant, trained people that were going into that situation to carry that attack out. It's not going to be on that level. It's going to be probably 10 times greater than that on retaliating against us because we did something way more serious.
Excellent. We have an audio clip from CNN. If we do, we will take it.
New this morning, could 18-year-old women have to register for the U.S. military draft system? Now, the system set up to draft men over 18 for military service is in case of extreme emergency. But now a U.S. District Court judge has ruled male-only registration is unconstitutional. The Selective Service system argued that in 1981, a Supreme Court ruling said women could be excluded from a draft because they were not, quote, similarly situated with men for draft purposes. However, Judge Gray Miller ruled men and women are similarly situated. The judge did not issue an injunction. We'll keep an eye on what happens next.
Interesting. And, of course, we have to go to Rochelle for that. Rochelle, what do you think about that?
On the Selective Service?
Yes.
I missed it because it didn't sound for me. Yeah, my sound was gone, but that's
We're talking about drafting 18-year-old women.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I looked up some of the figures on that, and I found that with the Selective Service, they said that the age of 18 is like 91%, and 25 years is nearly 17 million, you know. And then when you look at registration versus recruitment, you know, those are different numbers, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's going to get smaller with recruitment. And they're already struggling with recruitment and retention as it is, you know, and they've been talking about that for a very long time. And when you look at these young people, and now, you know, there's so many things that they're challenged with in terms of, you know, just their daily lives, whether or not they're going to be ready to take on a task of going with a draft, I doubt it very seriously, you know. And then the other thing is, look at the free world now that we have, and I don't want to bring this up again, we don't need to go into discussion, but what impact is it going to have now that we have recreational marijuana? You know, what impact is it going to have on those who basically would be mind, body, and willing? You know, will they be turned away? Will we use them? You know, look at how we put so much stress on the Iraq and Afghanistan military men and women who are still in the armed forces. You know, can they stand more deployment? You know, because it started off bad when it first got started. If you remember, they were going to deployment for over 2 years. You know, and then it dropped back to 1 year, you know, by law. So it's an act of Congress that would have to take place in order for us to do that. Right now, I don't see where Congress is going to go along with that. I just don't see it. They're already surprised that he pushed the button. you know. So, and I don't know why they were surprised, because he does what he wants to do, you know. Right. And they haven't listened to him thus far. So, I mean, he hasn't listened to them. So, it's going to be tough. It'll be rough.
Good point. Excellent point. WVON call-in number is 312-374-8130 if you'd like to join us. Certainly feel free to do that. We have a CNN audio clip. Listen up.
It is inappropriate, in my judgment, for senators on either side of the aisle to prejudge the evidence before they have heard what is presented to us, because each of us will take an oath that I take very seriously, to render impartial justice.
Jake, let me tell you kind of the most important thing here. We're all kind of reading tea leaves on what people are saying, particularly when they're back home in their states. Here's what actually matters. Both Collins and Murkowski seem to be behind Majority Leader McConnell's idea or proposal at this point in time to just start the trial with arguments from the defense, arguments from the House managers, and then kind of see what happens after that related to witnesses and whether to subpoena documents. Obviously, that's what Democrats want in the near term, right away, in an opening resolution. The bigger question, I think, becomes at this point in time, when Susan Collins says she's open to witnesses, or Lisa Murkowski appears to be in the same exact place, will they vote with Democrats when they actually get to that point? That, Jake, we'll have to wait and see on.
All right. Thank you. Any comment?
Yeah, I think they're going to vote with McConnell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they're going to vote with McConnell. They're trying to cover their behinds or something.
Mm-hmm.
They did this before. And I think that the bottom line is being open as opposed to insisting on witnesses. Just saying I'm open to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? That means nothing. I mean, it's just mamby-pamby. And when it comes time to vote, they're going to vote with McConnell. And I have no doubt, no question about that. I mean, if you're adamant about it, if you're saying you're taking this oath, this oath to be impartial, and then you still vote with McConnell.
Yeah.
So, they're trying to have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't believe Murkowski or Collins.
Collins, okay.
No, I
Very good.
don't believe it for a second.
Reuters, the Telegraph handout. What is that talking about? Reuters.
Is this the part? Yeah, I think
they may have.
This is the part they want me to.
Does she have it?
No, I have it here.
Oh, you have. Oh,
yeah,
you
this is
okay.
China, Russia, and Iran. They're going to hold a joint naval drills.
Mm-hmm.
So, China, Iran, and Russia will hold joint naval drills starting on Friday in the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Oman. China's defense ministry said that on this past Thursday amid heightened tensions in the region between Iran and the United States. China is going to send what's called the Jingning, a guided missile destroyer, to the drills, which will last until Monday, and are meant to deepen cooperation between the three countries. Their navies, ministry spokesman Wu Zhang told a military monthly news briefing at a monthly news briefing. The drill is a normal military exchange between the three armed forces and was in line with international law and practices, Wu said. It's not necessarily connected with the regional situation, he said, without elaborating. The Gulf of Oman is a particularly sensitive waterway that connects the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 1/5 of the world's oil passes. Mm-hmm. And you know how narrow that gets, and we're a little concerned about that, which in turn connects to the Gulf of Oman. The drills are also coming at a time of fraught tensions between the United States and Iran. Friction has increased since last year when the U.S. President Donald Trump pulled the United States out of the Iran 2015 nuclear deal with the six nations and reimposed sanctions on the country, of course, crippling its economy. Washington has proposed that the U.S.-led naval mission after several attacks in May and June on international merchant ships, including Saudi tankers in Gulf waters, which the United States blamed on Iran. Well, they denies, and Iran, of course, denies these accusations. Tensions have risen in the region, not only over Iran's disputed nuclear program, but also over September's attack on Saudi oil facilities, blamed on Iran by the United States and Saudi Arabia. Iran also denies their involvement in that. So the Indian Ocean, Gulf of Oman are key areas for international trade and maintaining security in the waterways. It's an important task. Brigadier General Abul Fazl Sherkarchi, spokesman for Iran's armed forces, said on Wednesday. The drill will take place for supporting and increasing experience in the security and international trade in the region. He said China has close diplomatic, trade, and energy ties with Iran, but China also has good relationships with Iran's regional. So it's, this is a whole bit about, as we know, the Hormuz is a very narrow area, and we're trying to get, if you're trying to get oil, 1/5 of the oil's supplies into the Gulf, Iran could cause quite a problem there for us.
Trump made the comment, Consular, that he was planning an attack, but we got him.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Well, why does that stop the attack?
Yeah.
If it's so imminent, that's what gets me. It's so imminent that it's as if it's about to kick off now. So you killed him. That doesn't stop the attack from going forward if there were an attack. And now he's believing his intelligence agencies where he didn't believe them for the last 3 years. He doesn't believe the CIA or what do we have, 16, 17 agencies, and now all of a sudden he believes. I think we all know what's happening here, and it's very unfortunate.
And Cliff, another thing that's important about what's going on with this situation is that all of this kind of culminates and works together in a very, very scary way, because you have this alliance between China, which we have a trade war going on with. We have Iran, with which we have an issue with. We pulled out the nuclear trade agreement. Now we've done an attack on them. We're going back and forth with them over the last few years, and North Korea. So these types of things, and also don't forget Russia, which we've been going tit for tat with for the last few years as well. But North Korea is also thrown into that mix. All these different regions are aligning themselves economically and are starting to change their economic policies to take over more resources around the world. They're moving into Africa. They're starting to make agreements even in Europe and parts of Asia, because they have the connections and the wealth and resources to finance building projects, dams, waterways, seaports, things like that. And don't forget, Iran used to be the third largest exporter of oil in OPEC until we put the sanctions on them.
Right.
So all these things are coming into play. So eventually, the way we're without really calling ourselves isolationists, we're actually moving into more of an isolationist stance. And all that does is basically causes us to fall back and suffer in the long run economically. All great powers have fallen by being isolationists. China is a great example of watching what happens when you're isolationist.
Very good. Anybody else?
Yeah, but one of the underlying things, and I think we were mentioning it a little earlier, that really is worrisome to me is that the people who are in these countries are now standing up, and they're looking at their human rights. And that's going to destabilize these countries even more. And as these dictators, because we have a whole line of dictators now, between Putin, Iran, North Korea,
Hungary, Philippines.
Everyone is, these dictators are lining up as a front. And what they're saying is that we have the right to put people under bondage and to have them follow our dictates to the letter. And if anyone steps out of line, we will kill them. And this is what we are supposed to be standing up as a country. So the thing that I think is really important is that people realize around the world that our Constitution, the way we wrote it, and what we're supposed to be standing for as a military force is to enforce the rights of people around the world on a humanitarian basis. And if we are faltering at the top right now with trust, with honesty, with making irrational decisions, not relying on our resources within our country, we are in big trouble.
Excellent point, Colonel. Doctor.
And he's treating this like it's a war game. This is what's getting me, especially when I heard him say, and I terminated him. That was like his best Arnold Schwarzenegger's
I'm the Terminator.
voice, he's terminated. And just his whole demeanor about it, and the bragging about killing people. It's
he's
bad
on his
for
golf
us.
course. He's on his golf course killing.
For America.
I mean, this man is comparable to killing a vice president of our country or chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff. He's this is serious.
He opened the door to people killing people who are in political positions now, who are in part of the governments.
Great conversation. Thank you all, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, Rochelle Crump, Attorney Ernesto Borges, and of course Sean Claiborne. You folks doing a good job as usual. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Absolutely.